Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be changing out the rear axle seal and rear wheel bearings on my Toyota 4Runner. Now my Toyota 4Runner has been leaking in the back for quite some time now, and I actually got it redone a couple years ago by a machine shop, and everything looked fine, but as of today it is still leaking, and most likely my wheel bearings are all saturated in gear oil now, so it's about that time to change them again. Now I know that machine shop did a good job because I did check their work and everything looked flawless, and the only thing I didn't do was actually flip the retaining ring on the axle seal, but even that seemed suspect because everything was riding perfectly when I checked it. Now before you get started, you may actually just need to change the seals, so if you don't have to go through the entire process of changing out the wheel bearings, definitely don't do that because that's a lot of work and a lot of special tools. So let me show you guys some things you should check before you actually do this job. Alright, first thing you want to check is to determine if you actually have a bad wheel bearing. Obviously you can spin this, and if it's not making a whole bunch of grinding noises, then you're probably okay. Next thing you want to do is grab it from 6 and 12 here and give it a good shake. You can kind of see mine's making quite a bit of noise in there. Grab it here on 3 and 6. Now a little bit of noise actually is within spec, I believe, but that seems pretty excessive. It's not that terrible, but it makes me a little nervous. Alright, if your vehicle is equipped with ABS, another thing you can do is you can take off this ABS sensor here. It's just held on by a 10mm. I've already loosened it here, and you can just use a shallow socket to get it off. And if yours doesn't come off, there's a little slot right here that you can put your screwdriver in, and you can kind of wedge it. And sometimes it's suction in there, which usually means you have gear oil in here. But if it's not, then you should be able to pry it out somewhat. And you can kind of see here, it's very shiny, which tells me gear oil is getting past the oil seal. Now, if you do notice that there is gear oil on your ABS sensor, the next thing you want to check is to make sure that this breather right here on top of the differential is not clogged. Now you can see here I have a hose on here, and that's because I've extended this to be higher up into the gas tank area. But if this is clogged, then your seals will blow as well because it's going to go into the path of least resistance for that pressure buildup, and usually it's going to be your seals. So if this is clogged and you have an oil seal leak right here, then most likely you just need to change the oil seal. You don't need to change the bearings. Obviously if your bearings are bad like mine are, then you definitely want to do that too. Alright, now that we've determined what the problems are with the vehicle, I'm going to go ahead and get started with this job. Let me show you guys all the parts and tools we're going to be using for this job. These are the parts that we're going to use for the job. Toyota recently discontinued the wheel bearing, so I had to source some parts from Marlin, and this is a kit that they sell on their website. I'm going to go ahead and open one of the kits so I can show you what's included. Alright, you can see here we have a Nachi bearing. This is made in Japan. This is not the OEM supplier. The stamping on here is 6308. And normally the OEM supplier is Coil, but this is the one that Marlin sources, and they have different ones depending on whatever they can source. Comes with a new retaining ring here. This is the retaining ring that retains this onto the axle. And it also comes with a C-clip that goes on top of that. Now you'll notice that only one retaining ring is included here, and that's because normally you can reuse the other one that's on your axle. Some axles actually need 2 of these, but if you're taking this apart, you should be able to reuse the one that's already in there on the current bearing. And the reason why they include one new one is because this is the one that's going to be riding against the seal. So you want to have a good, perfect machine surface here to go on with your new seal. Also comes with a new dust seal that you'll need. This here is the axle seal that goes on the inside for the gear oil. And you can see here, this is not the original OEM one. This is just an aftermarket one that comes with the kit. And then here comes with a new O-ring for the axle as well. You'll see where these things go later. Now, I don't really trust this aftermarket seal, so I went ahead and just bought an OEM seal. This is the part number here on the screen. You can decide what you want to use. If you want to go the cheap route and go with Marlin, you can just use their seal here. It should work just fine. And also, I also bought this OEM retaining ring as well. You can see here it's basically the same thing. The left one is the OEM one and the right one is the Marlin one. Now also, because we're going to be tearing apart the rear axles, some gear oil will be lost, so we will need some new 80W90 gear oil here. And also, since we're taking apart the rear brakes, you will need some brake fluid so that you can bleed your brakes. In terms of special tools you're going to need for this job, you're going to need a 20-ton Harbor Freight press, and you will need this pressing kit here. I'll leave a link for you guys down in the video description on where you can get one. This will make life a lot easier to press out all the necessary things and also press things back in as well. In terms of some tools that you can rent to do this job, you will need a seal puller. I have a 3-jaw puller here. You could use this style jaw puller, but I find that sometimes it could cause damage to the axle housing if you're not careful. So I'm gonna play it safe and just use my 3-jaw puller here. You can rent this at any auto parts store. You're also gonna need a seal driver kit so you can install your new seal. I believe you can also rent this, but if you can't rent it, you can buy these at Harbor Freight for relatively inexpensive. And one of these should fit the seal, and you should be able to put this on and hammer it in. All right, before you get started, go ahead and toss your bearing and your seal in the freezer here. That'll aid with installation later. All right, go ahead and lift the vehicle by the differential right here, put the jack right there, and set it on jack stands. All right, let's go ahead and remove the wheel. All right, we're behind the vehicle now, and we're gonna remove the parking brake here. Make sure you do check your tires and make sure the e-brake is not engaged, otherwise this will be really tight. I'm gonna take off this little clip right here, and then pull the pin up. Once you do that, you can slide this right off and set it aside. We already removed this earlier, so we can just leave that there. Okay, next thing we're going to tackle is this brake line here, since this brake line does get in the way of one of these bolts, so we're going to go ahead and remove this. It takes a 10mm. I'm going to be using a flare wrench. Recommend you use that as well, so you don't strip it. Once you get it loose, you can switch to a regular 10. Now, before you take this brake line off and it goes leaking everywhere, if you have a set of vacuum caps, you can use this 7/32 inch vacuum cap here, and this will prevent it from going everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and get that ready. All right, so go ahead and plug that up just like that, and it should stop leaking. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to tackle these 4 bolts right here. There's one here, there's one right down here, and there's one on the other side. So it takes a 14mm. You'll want to use a shallow socket. That way you can get to all of them. And this one right here is why you want to remove the brake line first. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to get this. Now obviously you don't need to be under the vehicle to do this. You can do this from this side here. I'm just doing it from this angle so I can see the camera. All right guys, to save time, I'm going to use my ratchet to take it the rest of the way off. All right, here are those 4 bolts. You're gonna wanna keep these because you will need this for the pressing job if you have to do the wheel bearings. All right guys, now that the wheel's off, go ahead and pull the drum off. If you can't get the drum off because it's too tight, there's 2 holes here you can use, and you can thread a bolt in there. I'll put the bolt size on the screen so you guys can have it. Mine's actually stripped out, but mine should come out relatively easily since it's adjusted properly. And I recently changed some things in here. Okay, at this point we're ready to remove the axle. As you can see here, I put a oil catch pan down here because the gear oil is going to come out. You're going to want to grab this and pull it straight out and make sure you don't drop it. Helps to have a rag. All right, we're going to go ahead and set this on the bench. All right, to make working with the axle easier, set your drum here so that way you have something flat, and then set your axle on top. Slide it in the holes and watch your fingers. All right guys, we have it on the workbench now, and as you can see here, I have both of them on here. This one is actually from the passenger side, and I've already rebuilt this. This is from the driver's side, the one that we just tested and confirmed that we have a lot of movement in the bearing. So this is the used bearing here. See how much movement and slop there is there? Let me show you the new one. See, you barely hear it and it barely moves. So this one's a new one, this one's a used one. And some might say that this is normal movement, but you can see here, this is a used bearing. new bearing. Now I just wanted to show you guys the wear mark where the axle is riding. You can see it kind of ends down here and it goes all the way up to that tapered part. So you can see it's got a pretty decent amount of seal. And I want to show you what the new one is that I did. And there's a 4mm gap here, and you can see where the seal starts and ends. So right now it's dead in the middle for both the starting point of the seal and the ending point. That's what you want. So you can probably argue that this one was probably pressed in a little bit too much, but you can see it had plenty of seal material contact here, and it still leaked. Alright, let's go ahead and start tearing everything apart now. You're going to need your hammer and one of these 14mm. You're going to need to knock out one of these studs so that way this puller will actually fit under here. So go ahead and thread it in. Just make it flush with the top here. And I'm using the one that's right here, right across from this bell crank here. Don't use the one that's right next to it. Use the one that's right here, because you'll be able to access it from the bottom still. That way you can put it back in later. Alright, go ahead and save that. We're going to reuse that later. Okay, next step is to slide this tool under there, and you're going to want to prep it first. Basically, you're going to grab the bolt that has this bevel on it. It goes into this recessed area here, and you're going to want to use the nut that holds it in place. Okay, now that you have everything prepped, you can go ahead and slide this in. You can see here, this is why we had to remove the stud earlier, so that way we can slide this tool in. Go ahead and slide your main tool over, and if you already heeded my warning earlier, you'll remember that this tool has a problem. And I recommend you buy the US version from Dwayne. I'll leave a link to his eBay store so that way you guys don't have these headaches. But basically the ID was too small, so I had to grind it all out to make it fit over the retainer here. Otherwise you wouldn't have enough studs. So you can see there it fits nicely now and the studs are showing. You're going to want to use the supplied washers on here now from the toolkit. And use the supplied nuts. And these nuts are using a 5/8 inch socket, so go ahead and tighten this up. Alright, once it's all tightened and set up, it should look something like this. The axle shaft should be up here, and we're going to go ahead and take this over to the press and press it out now. Alright, we're over here at the press now. You're going to want to set your setting here on the 4th hole. You're going to want to slide the axle under so that it's sticking through like this. Then you should be able to just grab this, pull it up, twist it, and then get it on top of your press plates like that. Alright, once you have that set up, you should be able to press this right out now. Okay, here's what the setup looks like. We've got it all centered, and I have a little crash pad down here. So we're going to go ahead and press this out now. Alright, you might hear a big bang when that race finally comes off. Alright, keep your feet clear. Alright, go ahead and put the tube back through the hole here. That way it goes down and then you can pull this out from the bottom. Alright, go ahead and pull the tube off, and you can see the retaining ring and the ABS gear is in there. Alright, I've gone ahead and disassembled the tool, and you can see here this is the old ABS gear. You want to keep this, clean it up, and we're going to reuse it later. This is the old retainer. You can probably toss this since the kit comes with one new one, and this one is already used. Next thing you're going to want to do is take off the snap ring here, and it can be kind of a pain to take off, so let's go ahead and see what we can do here. So I've got these here and they seem to work okay. You want to have a couple of flatheads handy so that way you can wedge it in there. Alright, so I monkeyed around with this for a little bit. Basically I spread it as much as I can. Stuck a little flathead in there, gave it a little gap. Once I got that gap, I put another flathead in there, and then I just kind of twisted this to get that snap ring out and then moved it up. So I should be able to get it off now, hopefully. And if you can't get it off, the new kit does come with a new snap ring, so you could destroy this. And you don't need to worry about marring up the surface too much because oil is not supposed to get over here anyways. The sealing surface is way up here somewhere. All right, go ahead and take that snap ring off now after monkeying around with it for a while. Go ahead and toss that in the trash. Okay, you're gonna wanna put your stud back in here because you're gonna need that for the next step. Go ahead and take your stud and stick it in from the bottom. Okay, once you get the stud through, you're gonna wanna put 2 of those washers that came with the press kit on there. Make sure this doesn't fall back. And then you're gonna take your 14mm and thread this on there. And we're gonna go ahead and tighten this, and that'll draw this stud back into the housing. Okay, next step is to put the tool back on here, and you just need the bare tool. And then put your 4 washers on, and then you're going to use the original Toyota 14mm here. Okay, once you assemble the tool, this is what it's going to look like, and we're going to take it right back to the press. Okay, same thing as earlier. We're going to slide it under, and we're going to set it on the press. All right, this time I've got the stock turned a little bit out. Should have did that earlier. Everything is engaged now, so we're going to go ahead and press it down. And just a reminder, make sure that C-clip is not on there still. Just like before. I'm gonna put the tool down, all the way down here. All right, let's head over to the workbench. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take off the 14mm now and remove the tool. Okay, now that the tool's off, you can see this is your bearing retainer here. You want to keep this if you have ABS, since you need one of these. This one doesn't seal the oil, but it holds the bearing in place. So it's not crucial that the surface is clean. So this one you want to keep. Go ahead and slide this off. So then we have room 2 here. Okay, on this here, you're going to want to flip this around. So here's the bearing. You're going to flip it around. Take your installer tool. You might be able to fit it in here. And that way you can knock the old bearing out. Just like that. And you can see this one is drenched in gear oil. Okay, flip it over now. Now that the bearing is out, you can see there's gear oil everywhere. We're going to knock out the dust seal now, and you're just going to take a brass drift or a screwdriver, flathead if you want, and just knock it out right there. Okay, there you go. Okay, at this point disassembly is complete. We're going to go ahead and clean everything up and prep it for reinstallation. All right, everything is clean now, and we're going to first install the dust seal around this surface here. We're going to take the new seal here, and we're going to put a little bit of grease on here to help us install this, just using this synthetic grease. Just needs a tiny bit around here to help get it on. And it only goes on one way, so just go ahead and push that in with your fingers. Go ahead and flip it around. On this side here, we're going to install the bearing. We're going to lube up the sides here a little bit, just to help. Shouldn't really need to since it's not a press fit. It's just kind of sits in there. All right, we're gonna go ahead and take our bearing out of the freezer now and slip it in here. All right, we got our frozen bearing here. If it's not frozen, it'll probably be fine. You can probably still put it in. I like to put the markings facing up. This one has markings on both sides, but if it only had it on one side, face it up so that way you can read it. All right, so go ahead and just slip it on there. It should fall right in. Okay, in this case, it isn't. Now you can choose to press this, but that's just a lot of work. What you could do is take your old bearing, this one here, put it right on top, and just hammer it in. Okay. All right, don't get too carried away. You don't want this one stuck in there, but it shouldn't, as you saw there. All right, the reason why I mentioned it doesn't really matter because sometimes this actually falls right back out when you try to reassemble everything. Okay, now that that's done, we're gonna flip it back over. I'm gonna go ahead and lubricate this dust seal here since it's going to be riding on that shaft over there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and lubricate the shaft as well. You'll lubricate this part as well where the retaining race will sit. All right, once you do all that, you're gonna place this piece here on top of this, and you're gonna want the dust seal to be going down, okay? So we're gonna flip this around and stick it in here carefully. I'm gonna be a little careful because the bearing might come out, like I said. And then you're gonna reuse your old race if you didn't get a race in your kit, or if you're using ABS. You're gonna wanna reuse the old one and put that in here. And the bevel side is gonna go up, so make sure this flat side goes down, okay? Now since I have new ones, I'm gonna go ahead and just use my new one here. But like I said, if you didn't buy an extra race, just reuse the old one that was holding the old bearing on. Okay, now normally if you have the proper tool, not this Chinese tool, this would go right over here and you would use this to press. The problem is this one doesn't fit over the shaft down here where it tapers, so I can't use this. If you buy the American tool, it will work just fine. Just put it just like this right over that. I'm gonna have to improvise and use this extra cup here. All right, so lesson learned by American. All right, once you have it set up like this, we're gonna take it over to the press and we're gonna get it ready to press this retainer all the way down and get this back together. All right, go ahead and slide your tube into the press here just like this. You go from underneath. It's still on the 4th hole here. And now we're gonna take this contraption and we're gonna basically put it into this hole. You see how this cup goes into there? That's what's gonna allow you to press it back together. Just be extra careful, it is heavy. All right guys, here's what my setup looks like. You're likely going to have to lift it up one notch, and I'm not going to be doing that because remember I have my cheap Chinese tool here and I had to add this extra cup in here. But since you won't be having that, you're probably going to put it on the 3rd position. All right, I found this piece of flat thing that I can put on top of here. This actually does fit in here quite well, so you could use that, or you could just put a socket in here so that way you get a nice even push. I also put these stacked 2x4s in here to see if I can get a little bit more height so I don't have to constantly adjust it. I don't think it's going to take that much force to push it in, so we'll see. All right, here we go. All right, so we're just about there. I can hear my wood cracking now, which tells me that it's pretty much bottomed out. And one way to check really quick is just to lift it up a little bit here, and you can look right under here and you can see where the C-clip goes. And that way you don't have to keep taking it out and in, out and in. Okay, let's go ahead and remove this. All right, everything still spins smoothly. So let's go ahead and take it back to the bench. All right, you guys, I got this back on the bench now, and I should have inspected my shaft before I did all the work, so make sure you guys do that. But you'll notice here, whoever did this last put a big old gouge in my shaft here, and unfortunately I can't do anything about that right now, so I'm just gonna send it. But fortunately, it isn't on the sealing surface up here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just ignore it for now, and we're gonna move to the next step. All right, next step is to install your C-clip here. We're gonna go ahead and just put it on the tube here. This is the new C-clip that came with the kit. Your old one is likely all distorted, so I wouldn't use it. Okay. All right, moving on to the next step. We're gonna take our ABS tone ring here, and you're gonna wanna put this side facing down, so the flat side is facing up. And then the last step is the sealing retainer here. And this is controversial, but what you're going to want to do is, normally OEM is going to have the tapered side facing up, but most folks are flipping it upside down to get more sealing surface now, and mainly because the seal that is in those axle tubes have been redesigned, and most likely if you put it the other way, you're going to have less sealing surface, and over time as the bearings wear down, you're going to have more movement and cause a leak. So I'm going to go ahead and put it this way, the tapered side facing down. And then we're going to put our cup back on there, and again, you're only going to put this piece on there, just like this. And this little reveal hole is going to show you how far into the axle you're going to be pressing this. But since mine has an issue, I'm going to have to use this cup here. But just for you guys will be using just this installer cup. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get back to the press now. All right, go ahead and get your tube set up just like this. You're going to want to rest it on there, and then you're going to pick this up and put it in over the top. It might be helpful just to leave this in here for now. That way we can just pick this one up. All right, here's the setup. You're likely going to have to put it on the third hole, but like I said before, since I have my cheap tool here, mine's extended a little bit. You're going to want this hole facing you so that way you can see how much you're pressing this retainer in. All right, you guys, we've got everything squared up, and I want to show you guys this part here so you guys can see how far it's getting pushed up. We're going to keep pressing, and it's going to go in a pretty good amount, and we're going to stop when we start seeing shiny surface. And I'll show you guys what I'm going to be doing. See some polished axle there, so we're going to want to go a little bit slow now. Now you're going to need to grab a tool like this Allen wrench here, and this one is a 4mm one. And typically you're going to want to do 3 to 5 millimeters of polished axle. So I'm going to go with in between, and I'm just going to go with 4. Almost there. All right, that looks like it's right at 4 now. Now you don't want to go too much here, so take your time. That way you get it right the first time. Otherwise you're going to have to take out this stud and do the bearing puller again. All right, go ahead and take the axle out now. Okay, everything is reassembled now, as you can see. The retainer is flipped, and you can do one final check here. Just lay the tool flat on here and see, and it's right on 4 millimeters. All right, now everything is rebuilt, so let's head back over to the vehicle and install the new seal. All right, we're back over here at the vehicle now, and if you want to do the grease test or the Sharpie test, now's the time to do it before you pull the old seal out. That way you don't have potential of destroying the new seal. In my case, I already did that test, and I'll show you guys the results. So everything looks pretty good here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the old seal out now and prep the new seal. So we're going to be using this 3-jaw puller here, and we're going to stick it in there and pull it out. All right, once you get the tool in there, you should be able to just pop it right out. Okay, now that the seal's out, go ahead and give it a good wipe down, and we're going to clean the surface here and check for any damage on the outer area where the seal rides on the axle. All right, go ahead and grab one of your seals, whichever one you decide to use, either OEM or aftermarket. We're going to find the right puck here so we can install it. All you have to do is just match it up here. Looks like this one is pretty good. And we're going to go ahead and use this one. All right, just like that, we're ready to go. All right, you guys, I went ahead and added this jack down here and jacked this side of the axle a little bit. Because of the pan hard bar, it actually tilts it like this, so it keeps dripping gear oil. And the reason why I wanted to stop dripping is so that way I can install the new seal with some RTV on here. And I'm going to be using the gear oil red one from Toyota, but you can use the gray one or the black one. And it's just extra insurance so that it doesn't leak on the outer area here. All right, you guys, I went and grabbed the seal from the freezer, and I'm going to put some RTVL around here, like I said, and we're going to install the seal. All right, so I've got RTV all the way around here. We're going to go ahead and put it inside. All right, try to get it nice and straight, and we're going to be using this tool here to knock it in. All right, we should be good to reinstall the axle now, and don't forget to remove this O-ring right here and replace it with the one from the kit. And before I slide the axle in, I'm going to grease this area just a tiny bit, so that way it's a little bit smoother going in. All right, I went ahead and put a little bit of grease on here. It's the same grease as earlier. Put a new O-ring on here now, and we're going to slide the axle in now. All right, when you slide the axle in, make sure you don't rest the axle on the seal. You want to kind of get it in there in one swoop. And make sure the bell crank is facing this cable right here. Okay. All right, once you got the axle slid back in, we're gonna go ahead and tighten it. It's a 14mm here. All right, once you've snugged those down, you're gonna wanna torque these nuts to 48 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern. All right, go ahead and grab your ABS if you have ABS and clean off all this gear oil. Might be a good idea to clean the tube here as well. Get all that old gear oil out. All right, go ahead and stick this back in and just give it a little push. Get your 10mm. All right, just snug this up. The torque spec is really low, so don't tighten it too much. It's plastic. All right, next step is to put your e-brake back on. You're just gonna wanna slide this over to this piece here. Go ahead and put the pin through. Don't forget the cutter pin here. All right, that's back on now. Okay, now that everything's back on, we're gonna focus on the brake line here. We're gonna take off the cap. All right, go ahead and stick it back in the hole here. Start this by hand if you can. All right, grab your 10 here and just tighten it up. All right, once it gets somewhat tight, don't tighten it with this. Grab your flare wrench here and tighten it with that. And it shouldn't take much. Torque spec is really low on this, and you're not gonna get a torque wrench on it, so just snug it up. All right, get everything a nice little cleaning here, so that way you can see if it leaks later. And we should be all done here. All right, guys, we're pretty much all done with the job here. Once you torque those 4 nuts down, you're gonna wanna put your drum on and torque your tires back to 85 to 90 foot-pounds. Now once you do that, make sure you also bleed the brakes and also refill the differential since a whole bunch of fluid came out. And one other thing to consider is if your rear brakes have a whole bunch of gear oil on it, it likely is time to replace those rear brakes as well, since once the oil gets on there, it's basically ineffective. Now in my case, I'm gonna leave it alone for now because mine wasn't too bad, and I'm gonna drive around and confirm that there's no axle leak first before I actually do that job. Now I've already driven about 40 miles on the vehicle, and I've gone back and checked the ABS sensors like I did earlier in the video, and I confirmed that there's no oil getting past those seals. So at this point, I'm pretty confident that the job was done well and things are working the way they should be working. Now one thing to consider is if your wheel bearing isn't bad, which I don't think mine was really that bad, since there wasn't that much play compared to the new one here, and it's actually very similar once I bolted everything up. But as you saw earlier, when I compared the two axles, you can see that there's a lot more play in the used one compared to the new one, but I don't know if that's within spec. Now if I were you guys and I didn't see a lot of play in the wheel bearings, just like in my earlier tests, I probably wouldn't even have done the work, but since I already had everything, I figured I'd just make a video for you guys. Most likely you can just get away with the axle seal and just make sure that breather is cleared so that way you don't get further leaks. Usually when the wheel bearings go bad, there's a lot of play in the wheels, and that's what actually causes the leak to happen. And in that case, you would do the entire job. And one last thing I wanted to mention is, although the video looked like everything went smoothly, that's because that was the second side. I actually had a lot of problems on the first side, and mainly is because of that Chinese tool that I purchased. One of the reasons why I had issues was the tolerances on that main tool were not well done by the Chinese copycatter, and I had to go and grind out that tube to make it fit over the retainer. Once I was able to do that, everything went relatively smoothly until we got to the final installation, and that tool had problems too. Unfortunately, that one I could not grind, so I had to improvise by using one of my press sleeves. So if I were you guys, I wouldn't even buy the Chinese tool. I'd just go with the American-made tool, and basically a lesson learned for me, always buy American. Well guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. As always, I will leave links to all the products and tools used in the video down in the video description, so make sure you guys check that out. If you guys like the video, make sure you guys hit that like button. It really helps the channel out a lot. And if you guys like content like this, make sure you guys check out my other channel and also hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. As always guys, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.